Look how fancy that looks. Putting my logo up there on that screen. All right, we're gonna remove that. So here we are. It is our first happy hour. We'll see if we have anybody join us for it or not. Uh, it's okay if we don't. Everything starts somewhere, right? I'm excited for this. Here, I'm gonna close that one out. Uh, so here's something I discovered today. Uh, Working like a million hours before doing one of these really makes it interesting shifting gears and getting down to something like this. Mm. Probably the most interesting thing is being out of coffee already. Here I am, 2 seconds in, I'm already out of coffee. I might have to request some from Molly at some point here. Let's see if we get anybody coming in. If not, we'll just babble for a while and see how it goes. I'm thinking maybe I will invite people from Facebook and just see if we maybe catch a few people. There were a lot of requests to do this at this hour of the day because a lot of people can't make it to my Saturday morning 8 a.m. time. Are you telling me this is nap time now? Is that what we're getting? Could be. Could be that. Let's see. So this one is going right now. Let's see if I can share and invite people. There's invite. And oh, hey, somebody's here. Who is joining me? Let's find out. And I'm going to send just a bunch of invitations while we're talking and get my comment going. There we go. All right. So, anyway, we have our first guest joining us here. And I just sent out a million invites. So, hopefully, we'll get some more people coming in. It is Thursday afternoon. I've had a long day of marketing, lots of conversations, lots of things in the atmosphere. Uh, One thing I want to talk about is this is interesting because it came up today. And I know that I've mentioned this kind of thing on here before because of my background. I had somebody that I was writing with about uh, doing an event with some horror writers, and which is really cool. And one of the things that they wrote me though was they said, "Hey, not only is there this thing going on in Evanston, which is that far from us, they said they have an event coming up in a couple of months. I'm going to suggest to them that you come and speak, which is I'm always up for that. I'm always up to go and speak at places. In fact, you should be too. No matter what it is that your line is, whether you're we talk about marketing books, marketing your podcast, marketing your car detailing company, marketing whatever it is, or just brand you, any opportunity to speak on a panel or to speak live in front of people, huge benefit. Okay, somebody's writing, and I want to make sure that this is not. Oh, okay. I wanted to make sure they weren't saying, "Hey, you're not live." Uh, so the other thing they wrote me about though was the importance of or not the importance of, but the uh, possibility of me helping them start podcasts, create podcasts, and what that looks like. And I want to address this a little bit because um, I have another company. I have like a bunch of companies. One of the companies I have is, here, I'm going to take these off. Bad enough I have to hear myself in here. I don't need to hear myself through these. Uh, so with podcasting, first of all, I am a firm believer, as I'm sure you could guess, that podcasting is an incredibly intimate medium, super important medium when you're talking marketing. It is one that you can do so much with and you can really get to people as opposed to, you put a Facebook ad, they see it, they don't. Okay. I know they can be effective. Obviously, I teach that as part of one of my jobs. Uh, but in reality, it's not that intimate. It doesn't get into you unless it just happens to hit the right thing. I'm looking through Facebook, I leave through and I see all these things. And sometimes I click on it. And I want to go see what they have. Sometimes I'll see something somebody posts that has something embedded in it. You click on it. Same thing with TikTok. They've got their TikTok shop. You click on it. That's not a personal thing, right? Whereas with a podcast, there are a couple of ways it can go about it. One is people will buy advertisement or they'll do affiliate marketing on your podcast. And you hear the ad, and if you're like me, you hit the 15-second or 30-second skip until you're out of the ads. But if you think about what a podcast is something that you are choosing to listen to. It is not something you're scrolling through. You've decided, I want to hear this. I like what they're saying. I like the host. I like the subject matter, right? And you're there. You're committed to do it. I don't usually look to see how long a show is because I know for me, my listening habit is I might listen for 15 minutes and then I listen for an hour the next time I listen, and I might break it up, Uh, but what happens in there is you've got the possibility of skipping the ads. But if you have a podcast where you have gotten an interview on a podcast, or you've gotten friendly with the hosts and you get them to talk about whatever it is you're selling, it has a much more personal touch. You're much more likely to motivate somebody to a call to action. I think podcasting is extremely efficient when it comes to that. Hey, Chinto, I'm so glad you made it. I've got a couple people in here. I keep seeing one in, one out, two out. I don't know what's up, but I'm so glad you're here, Chinto. I was talking podcasting, and I know you had a question about podcasting, so I'm going to actually address your question about that. But before I do, so uh, I have a lot of thoughts about what a great marketing tool podcasting can be. Now, this is actually going to go right towards you, Chinto, and I hope other people get something out of this. Uh, you were talking about doing a podcast, and you were asking me where to put it up. So you need a place to carry your RSS feed. And you said in the past you've done YouTube. So there's a couple of questions that you're going to want to ask yourself. Now, once again, I'm using you as the example because you asked me about it. But for anybody listening, first of all, I encourage you to start a podcast. And I also encourage you to broaden your horizons on what a podcast can be and how it can work. What I mean by that is it doesn't have to just be audio. It can be video. You can call what I'm doing a podcast. Okay. Don't get bogged down in that. You can also use something like this. For example, I'm telling people I've got this podcast to do it on Saturday mornings. It's an AMA, blah, blah, blah. It is only living on Facebook and now YouTube. It'll be on my website. That's it. Okay. I am not taking the audio, stripping it out, and putting it on an RSS feed. So you won't get an audio podcast version. Although now that I'm saying it, anyone familiar with me knows I am probably going to end up doing that because I could take a chunk out of this each time and put it up on my regular podcast feed for people to check out, maybe encourage them to come to this AMA and have some fun. Back to it. So, Chinto, you had said to me in the past, all you've done is YouTube stuff, and you were asking where you would put a podcast, meaning like an RSS server. So I said, what I use is Libsyn. There's Blueberry. There's all sorts of them. And off the top of my head, I can't remember again the one that I use for a show that I produce. But there's a lot of them out there. Okay. Now, what that does is those are audio podcasts, and some of them do offer video as well. Okay, so don't at me about that. If you are thinking, I want to have a podcast where I talk about my subject matter, I'm going to do a half hour a week or whatever the amount of time, and this is going to be my podcast. It's going to be the Chinto podcast, chatting with Chinto. Okay, great. You can put it out as audio. You can also then take the same thing, put it on video as audio with a stagnant image, or you can put it there with the video. So now you have two different versions of the same format. Or if you're like, well, I want to have this thing, I want to do these interviews with people, but I don't really care if it's in Apple Podcasts or anything. I just want to have this that I can work with. Well, there's no reason you can't do it as a YouTube show. And then if you decide, hey, I would like to use this later, do what I was saying. Pop it in whatever you're using, GarageBand uh, or man, I can't think tonight. You see what happens when we do a later one? I lose my mind a little bit. Um, but pop it in Audacity. That's free software you can edit with. Put that video file in there. You might have to convert it to MP3 or WAV instead of an MP4, and just turn it into an audio podcast. Now, once again, you have two pieces of content. You can reach other people. When you get a server like Libsyn, you're doing that so that it will go to Apple Podcasts and Spotify and wherever else, any of those, feeds, right? But if that's not really what you're after, if it's really just, I want to put my content out there, I want to have something I can maybe just share with my newsletter, you don't need that. Okay. You don't need the RSS feed for that. You can literally make it on YouTube, doesn't cost you anything. Or if you're like, no, I really just want to do audio, you can even put it on, man, I'm drawing blanks again. There is SoundCloud. You can even put SoundCloud. And as long as you don't go over the limit of uploaded content in a month, you can upload it there for free. Okay. And you can take your show, get the embed code, and put it in your newsletter. Boom. You did what you wanted to do with it. You don't have to spend the money to have an RSS feed that you put out to Apple and wherever else, Spotify. Okay. So that's one thing. You want to think about, where do I want this to go? How do I want to use it? I don't care if it's only living on a newsletter. That's a podcast. Okay. I think actually I was talking with Chinto about this. For a while there, we were trying something with my network where we had a Patreon page. And so we were producing all these different podcasts every month. And we've got, I don't know, man, I think that the height we were at was about 40 something a week. Okay. So we would take that, we would make a newsletter that had, here's this week's podcast, and you'd get all these different podcasts and have links to them. Okay. And then we had our Patreon, and we would put the same thing up for free on our Patreon, so that we're like, hey, if you like our thing, go ahead and listen there for free, try it out. And then we had free content every week, which were podcasts that literally only ever lived on Patreon. You can upload them as audio only. So there's just a player. You could put video. You could do whatever you want. In a case like Chinto, you could do an exclusive drawing that you're using for Patreon and attach the audio to it. So they get this exclusive drawing thing. And then it's got this little interview that you've done. We did full blown podcasts where they were like an hour or more. We also did little bite-sized things like 3 questions. And the only place it lived was on our Patreon. We then figured out that we could take some of that content, do some of that stuff, throw it on. There's a thing called Buy Me Coffee, and Buy Me Coffee has a podcast thing. So we said, well, why don't we put these exclusive little 5-minute things on there? So anybody that spends $1 buying me a coffee gets a whole bunch of these little 5-minute audio and video clips. It was awesome. Actually, that one was just audio. I think it might have video now. I can't remember. But we were making a podcast specifically to drive people to spend $1, to donate $1 to our network to keep us going. Was it a podcast? Yes. Was it effective? Yes, because when people get that kind of stuff, when they get podcasts, when they get a Buy Me Coffee, audio thing, they're doing it because they want to support you. They want to hear from you. They don't want you buying a t-shirt that you have to then ship to them, and at the end of the day, you've made nothing or lost money on. They just want that little bit of extra out of you. One thing that I tell people is that are talking about this kind of stuff is, think about you as a fan. So let's say you're a Weird Al fan, okay? And he decides he's going to have a podcast. And then he has a Buy Me Coffee and he has a Patreon. And you go, well, why does he need the money for that? Everybody needs the money. Okay. It's okay. As long as what he's giving you is something of value to you in those areas. And you have to think about, what is it that would be of value to me, right? To me, getting a little 5-minute 3 questions with somebody else, it's fun. It's off the cuff. for $1 a month, totally worth it. I brought this up before. Jeff Tweedy does songs on his. He's the lead singer-songwriter for Wilco. He does a song. I think it's like every Friday you get a free song. Well, it's not free because you're paying, obviously, to get his Substack that has this on it. That's another one. You could just literally make a podcast that only lives on your Substack. What I tell you to do with anything like that or with Patreon is do something that's for free, and then you have a barrier to entry where they have to get through. They have to pay to get the extra. The way Jeff Tweedy does it is he writes something. You get that for free. You get these updates. There'll be a picture here and there. And then if you want the audio, if you want a song, you pay the $5 a month and you get these songs. And it's awesome because he's not selling them technically. So he does covers and things that you will never hear anywhere else. It's so cool. What we did, we had a show called Nuff Said, secretly still recording. Nobody knows. Someday you'll get the announcement about it. And we're building a back catalog just to release it. Boom, big blowout of a show. And with this, we used to do a thing where we had our podcast, and at the end of the podcast, oh no, that was This Week in Geek. With Enough Said, what we did was we created a separate podcast that was the barrier to entry. So you could go to Patreon, you could listen to our regular episodes for free. If you wanted the video version, because we're so good looking, no, you paid the barrier to entry. If you wanted us doing a breakdown of the Daredevil TV show, you had to be a subscriber to get that stuff. It worked. And when we talk about it being this, personal medium, the people that subscribed, it was really interesting. They felt like they had access. So we would get comments and things to us that were much more like they felt like they were in the club than people that are just like, oh, hey, I liked your show. It was way more like, these are the fans that are really into what you do. Now, what we did with This Week in Geek was something a little bit different. And this one I truly loved. We would do the show. It was about an hour long. There were 4 of us, and we would be jackasses the whole time. But we had rules. We've had rules on all of our stuff because, number one, it's really hard to market a podcast if you swear. I know people do it all the time. Try to get a sponsor. It's really tough. They don't want that. I always went from the philosophy of, hey, I want to be able to listen to these podcasts freely. What if my daughter gets in the car? She was, 5. She gets in the car and I'm hearing somebody drop an F-bomb at me, who's talking about the show Once Upon a Time. It's like, this is a show that's family friendly and you're dropping F-bombs on me because, I can. Guess what? Not marketable. Big mistake. But we would do our show, keep it clean. If it didn't get clean, we would drop anvil sounds in that to cover up the occasional. And then at the end of the show, as we were signing off, we would fade it out and we would say, okay, that's it for the regular show. If you would like to join us for the unfiltered after party, go to YouTube. We're on there live right now. Go to our Patreon. We're on there live right now. Whatever it was that had the barrier to entry. If they went to YouTube, they could get in and they could see the video, but it would fade out, leading them to our Patreon. They wanted the whole thing. They had to pay for the Patreon. And some people did. We didn't have a huge audience. It was one of those shows that was like a favorite of other podcasters and that. So I'd always run into people that loved it and were like, yeah, but our numbers aren't that good. What's going on? You're that band that every band likes, right? But this worked. We did get some subscribers that did it just so they could get that unfiltered thing. And they felt like they had that access. I know a guy out of Ireland who was doing all these different things and podcasting and everything. And what he did is he still has his free podcast. And then on it, he talks repeatedly about join my Patreon. And joining the Patreon, you get access that the other people don't. So he had a couple of interesting value things he had. But the one that seemed to be the most effective was you get an invite, a private invite to a to our invite or to our Discord server. So you could get into the free Discord server, but then there were certain ones that you can lock people out. You get a private invite that once a month, he and the co-hosts would go on for an hour or 2 hours on a Friday night, and they did a private Discord chat. So you got this thing. If you ever talked on video and Discord, you see what it's like. You are talking right there with them, and they would essentially do an AMA and do their show. And I saw it. They drank a lot. It was filters are off. Let's have fun. Very effective. Now, when we talk about marketing, look at who would match that type of thing. Okay. So if I'm them and they're Irish and they're talking about whiskey when they do their show after hour, I would talk to a whiskey manufacturer and say, "Hey, do you want to be a sponsor or do you want to co-sign on something?" I mean, anything helps. Or or think outside of the box. They're probably not going to pay because a lot of people won't pay. It's hard to get sponsors. But hey, maybe we'll mention your thing if you'll retweet our show. Now you're eating up their audience as much as they're eating up your audience. That's a pretty interesting idea. Now you can come up with something of value that you can sell or have your goal. If your goal is to get more people to follow your newsletter, when they tweet out, you make sure your call to action is about signing up for our newsletter. One of my favorite things to do. When you do that, you now have permission. If they sign up for your newsletter, you have permission to sell to them. So now you can sell your books, you can sell your t-shirts, or you can put up your holiday gift guide where you have your affiliate link with Amazon and you can say, here's my gift guide for this year. And it's stuff that you have to stock, but people can click on it. And when they buy it, you get a percentage. It's not a great percentage, but it can do something. This is why I love podcasting. There are so many avenues you can go down. You also, for the introverts that don't want to be on camera, you don't have to be on camera. There are no rules. Does video work? Yeah, video works better, actually, for general attraction on social media. So when you're putting your stuff up on social media, include a picture. Don't just make it a blank screen. If you have video, great. If not, that's okay too. Look at TikTok. I was watching TikTok the other day. I go through like Pod Talk, and the one guy did this really cool thing where he took a clip of his show. He took 30 seconds of his show, and it was just him sitting in front of a microphone like he was listening to it. And he's just kind of doing this. And then he goes like that when he made a point on his show. And it wasn't like jackassy, right? I was watching it. It was like I was listening with him. And he's talking, and then he said something dumb, and he was like, you know, uh, when he did that, it was like, hey, I made a good point. What did he have to do there, right? Easy, 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 easy TikTok content that he just used his podcast for. Going back to the original idea, you don't need to do it the traditional way of, I'm going to go to Libsyn, I'm going to create a podcast, here are all the steps. I mean, I can walk you through that. I coach and consult on that all the time. I have a company called The Podcast Profs. And that one, I never really made that thing take off the way it should. The original concept was I was going to have a team of marketers, which I have a team, but it turned out podcasters don't want to pay for a whole team. So it didn't take off the way I expected. But as a result of starting that, I do get people to say, hey, how do I start a podcast? How do I make the most out of my podcast? I've been doing it. I had one guy, he's been doing it for 5 years. And he came to me, he saw me speak someplace, and he said, I have had the same 40 people listening to me for 5 years, and I think I know almost all of them. I was like, "Okay, so what's your goal?" And he was like, "Oh, well, I want to get to 1,000 followers." I said, "Okay, well, from 40, that seems like a lot, especially if you haven't grown." So we had to go back to the drawing board and figure out what is it he could do. Didn't have to change his show, had to change his marketing a little bit. What happens at 1,000? Suddenly people might be interested in sponsoring, or your affiliate marketing might pay off. And you guys know what affiliate marketing is, right? You can sign up for them on a lot of websites. Amazon's an easy one. Go to Amazon or pick your favorite. I like Scotch tape dispensers. There's a company that makes these. Okay, we know it's Scotch, but let's say it's not the Scotch that makes tape. Let's say this is the Scotch Brothers, and I now have some followers, and things are going well. I contact them. Hey, I talk about your tape dispenser all the time. That's a boring show. Uh, they're not going to sponsor this company. Too small. They're not going to pay anything. You say it's only $20 an episode. They're going to go, how am I going to make that $20 back? But on their website, they have an affiliate link. This is what you look for. If they don't have one, you can ask them about it. Where now I get a link that is specific to me, and I'll talk about your product. And anytime somebody buys it, I get a little sliver. Now, for Amazon, the sliver is minuscule because they're like, we're huge. People buy tons of stuff. I've had an Amazon affiliate link for 10 years. I know for a fact people have made a couple of big purchases using my link, and we've never made anything. That's not a great one. But there are good ones out there. We used to make a little bit of money off of a headphone company. It worked great. Would it be a good idea to reach out to local shops? Oh, let's make this fun. Would it be a good idea to reach out to local shops, see if they would want to sponsor? Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially if you have a relationship with them. Just remember, if you're going to get them to sponsor, you want to come at it with numbers. They're going to ask numbers. You also want to be armed. I'm going to arm you right now. I don't mean armed. I mean armed with a way to counteract what they're going to say. Because what they're going to do is you're going to go to them and you're going to say, hey, I've got a podcast and I'm looking for sponsorship. Your audience matches my audience. I think it would be a great fit. And they're going to say, no, we don't have any budget for it. And you go, okay, well, it doesn't cost very much. And it's a great way to reach your exact audience. And if you can keep that conversation going until they go, okay, so how many downloads do you have? They're going to ask that. This is where I arm you. You can say, well, first of all, it fluctuates. And something like the dirty secret in the industry is if somebody comes in here and tells you their download numbers, they're probably lying because it's incredibly hard. There is no aggregator that tells you an accurate number. You can do the math and kind of figure out, but I'll tell you what, I talked to a guy with a huge show. His downloads, nowhere. But everybody knows this show. And it was one that was always on iTunes, always at the front page. I ended up interviewing the guy for something. He told me his honest numbers, according to this algorithm way, you could kind of figure it out. And it was nothing. I was like, wow, I'm almost hitting those numbers. So we were not that far apart. But he makes a lot of money at it because he tells people it's like the numbers don't matter. What matters is my audience. If we share audience, they're going to be motivated to go to you because they see that, hey, he likes them. There's a relationship. They're supporting him. This is a good fit. So I'll give you an example. Chinto with art. If you're going to be interviewing artists, so for you're interviewing artists, you figure out my audience is not the general public. My audience is artists, right? So then you think outside of the box. You go, I could go to Blick and try them. They're probably not going to do it. But I could go to the paper company, because I know that comic book artists, use specific paper. I used to know a guy that sold some. Grass Green used to sell comic book paper. I don't know if he's still in that business. He sold really good stuff. And I would go to Grass and say, look, I have an audience that buys comic book drawing paper. How many do you have? Does it matter? Because in reality, if I have 10 people that listen to me and those 10 people are your exact audience, that's a fit. My cost, now if I only have 10 people, my cost is going to be super low. And you can say like, yeah, I know my traffic on my Instagram is like I have 200 followers. I don't know how many listeners I have, but I can kind of gauge it. I've got 200 on Instagram. I've got 300 on Facebook. Um, it's weird. I have like 4,000 Snapchat followers. I don't know why. And they go, oh, okay. Yeah. So what I do with my sponsors is I offer $10 a show. And I do 4 a month. So you're talking $40 a month. We do it in 3-month increments. So you got to pay a quarter each time. Okay. So now you're at $120, but you're getting 3 months worth of advertising. I do a 30-second ad, but I do it as a live read. I do it where I'm specifically, it's me talking about your product and how much I like it. And I'll also, about once every couple weeks, I'll do it. I'll do something on social media, whether it's on Instagram or Facebook. I'll even do it once a week, just saying, hey, I want to thank my sponsor. Plus, it goes in my show notes, and that lives forever. It's evergreen. I'm doing interviews. People like to listen to interviews. I don't care if it's current. If they like your interview show, they'll go back and listen to the last 5 years worth of interviews. Your ad lives on there. Other ads you hear on big podcasts, they use a thing called mid-roll. And with mid-roll, that company changes out the ads. So let's say I do one for you, Mr. Green. Until I take that off of my feed, your ad will live on my feed. Whereas if you were doing it with a bigger show, bigger numbers, they're doing mid-roll. So you have to pay mid-roll to put your ad on. You may have bigger reach, but you're going to have that bigger reach for a few weeks or however much you can afford. And then when the next guy gets in line, your ad disappears, not evergreen. So you could have this perfect target, but your budget doesn't dictate that you can keep it going. And boom, you're inched out by a competitor. Whereas on mine, you're not. I may get, if you drop off at some point, I may get a competitor that I get that's on newer episodes, but those older episodes, you're still there. What you do is when you talk about it, you're talking them out of the idea of I have to know your number. And that's the other thing. So this whole idea of how many downloads do you have? How many listeners do you have? Everybody says that because of all the stuff they've seen, radio advertising, TV advertising. I have a 4 share. I have a that. What I challenge you to do is say, okay, well, what's the number you're looking for? Do you even know what the numbers mean or how we get them? I've never had somebody answer with a number that wasn't just stupid. Well, I want to make sure I had a guy not long ago. I know these shows, they get like 1 million listens. So that's where I want to be before I put a dime in. Okay. You're getting a show that has 1 million downloads per episode. You're going to pay out the nose. You got that kind of budget? No. You're a local comic book paper guy. And $10 or $20 an episode, reasonable. And you're going direct to the audience you want to hit. The guy with 1 million downloads is not directing right to artists and that. It's too broad. What number is it you think is reasonable? What number is it you want? If you say you have 10, they're not going to go for 10. But if you have 100 listeners, I have 100 listeners. $10 an episode. It's worth the gamble. And you know why I know that? And I also know they're full of it when they say, oh, no, that won't work. We used to own a store. People would come to us all the time with their hand in our pocket, right? So I got really good at saying no. But I'd get, somebody come in and they'd say, oh, we're doing a basketball game and we're looking for sponsors for our thing. Oh, how many people do you think? They'd go, well, we know that we've sold 20 tickets. Oh, okay, that's interesting. How much is it? They'd say $10 to be in our thing. So I would pay $10 to reach 20 people so I could have an ad in their flyer. I knew I was supporting them, and I knew their audience knew I was supporting them. So why wouldn't a podcast that's going to reach a lot more people be of value to me? It always would. As long as you can prove to me that it is the audience that we share. Does that make sense? I know that was a lot. So, what other questions? I know I went on quite a long time about that. Chinto, you were asking specifically about some of that stuff. It seems like it's you and I. I've had a lot of people jumping in and out of this episode. Uh, maybe they don't know it's happy hour. Uh, so I'm gonna take that down. So, so Chinto, what questions do you have? There's somebody else in here too. If you have questions, lay them on me. I am full of answers. I see nothing. Okay. We'll talk about podcasting a little bit more. So let's break down the definition here because people get stuck with that. With podcasting, that was it. Okay. Well, we don't need to talk about podcasting anymore. Another idea? If not, I will talk about other stuff. So here's another thing. This goes back to brand you. So podcasting, you're putting yourself out there, right? You're putting your brand on the line. You not only your business, but it's you. Okay. Which actually is what people want. Think about it. When you watch TikTok and you're flipping through, the ones you stop on typically, even though you can do it without putting your face on there, and it can be very effective, but most of the time it's we see the person, we're having the contact with them. I've had a number of podcasts talking about this same kind of thing, but I have more listens and watches now that I do video, right? Um, it's brand you that you're putting out there. So today I had an interesting conversation with somebody that made me think about this and the brand you type thing. Uh, she's somebody who's going to be coming to one of our events. She's going to be a guest at it. It's awesome. She was all excited. And in the conversation, she said, "Hey, have you ever heard of this X event?" And I said, "No, I don't know that one." And she was like, "Well, it gets about 20,000 people. It's not as big as some of these other ones." I'm like, 20,000 people is pretty damn good. And she said, "Well, I know we can get you uh, on panels and that." And she said, she's like, I don't know if that's something you'd be into. I'm like, well, first of all, if there's a panel and it's within my distance, I'm going. I'm going to always go on that panel. Why? It's an opportunity to sell to people. It's an opportunity to connect with people. It's an opportunity to reach whatever your goal is. I always talk about my goal is to get you on my newsletter. Hey, Bruce. Uh, it's kind of like networking, but you're the center of attention at networking. Always take those. So when she said that, I was like, yeah, yeah. And she goes, actually, I thought of another one. And she thought of this big group. And she said, they're doing a thing in San Diego. I'm like, yeah, unless they're paying the way, I don't think they're going to bring me out to San Diego for this thing. She said, well, they also do an online like university where they do these like seminars. And she goes, I know full well because I run the education track that they're going to want you. But, you'd have to come up with something for like an hour. Okay, first of all, I come up with something for an hour at least once a week, as you guys see. Uh, Second of all, I went, of course I would do that because once again, it's putting brand me out there. It's letting people know what I do, what my thoughts are. It's giving me a chance to sell to them. So when you do something like that, you go in with a purpose. You know what you want to do. If I want them to sign up for my newsletter, I mention it more than once during the thing. I have a newsletter. Let me talk about newsletters today for a bit. And you do that. Then you're like, you know what? I really want you to sign up for my newsletter. That's where this is all going to work. And you promote that very specific thing, right? Here, I'm going to show you. Thought I smelled hair burning. How dare you? Uh, okay, here. I'm going to show you exactly what I mean. Because when I go and I do an event, if I'm doing an online thing, guess what pops up? Yeah, join my newsletter. This is an automatic. I make sure that whatever my goal is, if I want to sell books, we did a meetup for podcasters in Chicago. At the meetup, hold on, I'm going to show you something. At the meetup, I had a goal. My goal was number one, to get people, I had two. One was to get people to join the group that hadn't joined the group, because there were a lot of podcasters there that were not part of the Facebook group that I run. Okay. Second goal. So I had a stack of my book. Now, I didn't have a booth. I didn't have a table or anything at this con. I don't even know if it was legal for me to sell it, because, cons can be weird with their rules. But what I did was I made sure when I introduced myself and I talked to everybody in the room, I got my little shot there. I said, hey, two things: join my newsletter, blah, blah, blah. And then I held this up and I said, hey, just so you know, we are working on a second volume of this book. This is real stories of podcasters by podcasters. It's about their lives. There's some really great stories in here. We're working on a second volume. We want a lot more great stories. And you guys are podcasters. Come talk to me if you're interested. I have a few books here, so if you're interested in buying one, let me know. And I left it like that. Sold a box of books in about 2 minutes. It was like, I don't know how long it was. It was literally so fast that, like, it was like, here's money, here's money, here's money. We're out of books. What I'm saying is, find those opportunities where know your goal, know what you want to do. If you've got something to sell, they have a way to do it. If you want them on your newsletter, if you want them to follow you on social media, if you just want brand awareness, you know how you do brand awareness? What's the name of my show? Okay. You guys just said, I don't know, pour over marketing. Yeah, it's pour over marketing. What did I just do? I put the name out there more than once, and you guys had to think about it for a second, and it put the name in your head. That's brand awareness. Okay. So if I'm doing a con and I want people to know about Southgate Media Group, I mention Southgate Media Group a few times, then I'll say, like, hey, anybody here a fan of Southgate Media Group? No. You've heard of it, right? Dead silence. Come on. What's the name of my company? Southgate Media Group? Yes. Okay. You clearly know about it. All I did was get brand awareness. That was my thing. And then I showed them. And then I showed them, oh, I couldn't do it fast enough. Then I showed them that. Okay. I'll remove that. So getting opportunities to speak to groups, getting opportunities to go on video things, getting interviewed, these are vital. I don't care what your business is. You want to put yourself out there. Let's say you don't even do that. Let's say you're like, well, I've got this business, or I don't really have a business, but I'm trying to build something. I'm trying to figure it out. Okay. If you don't really have something tangible, that's okay too, because you want to make people aware. Okay. That who you are. You want to look up, you can go to meetup.com, not to get dates. There's a thing called Meetup, where there are groups that get together. I used to go to all these networking events around here way back. I'd go Meetup, had all these different groups. It was like the Northwest Suburbs Meetup networking group. Great. So I would go to that, and that's how I got to network with people. You can call chambers of commerce. You can just Google local networking groups. And I don't care what they are. I mean, if it's like specifically a networking group for morticians, it's probably not going to work for you guys, right? But if it is a general business one, a local networking group, anything like that, heck yeah, go to it. Just mingle and meet people. You could even say, hey, I haven't started my business yet, but I want to see what other businesses are in the area. I want to build some relationships. And you know what? You're going to walk out of there with a bunch of cards. That's marketing brand you. I've done that and said, hey, you know what? I love to speak to groups. Does this group ever have people that, talk at them? My goal is to get to talk in front of people. Okay. Chinto wrote something. This has been my strategy for conventions this year. I'm applying to a bunch of them, expecting rejections, but getting my name back out there. So, Chinto, I have a question. Your strategy for this, is it to apply to be a guest? Is it to apply to be a panelist? What are you thinking there? This is actually really important too. I'm also submitting to short story publishers. Great idea. Wonderful idea. And you can also look for calls for short story collections. So like these small publishers, I know Four Horsemen does a lot with writers, like for anthologies and that. Three Raven Press does a lot of fun ones. There are a lot of small companies that look for short story writers uh, for various anthologies they're putting together so that they can see who's out there and maybe offer book deals eventually. Um, Panelists and Artist Alley. Yeah. So Artist Alley, some of them let you do it for free. A lot of them you have to pay for. Panelists you don't pay for, which is great. One thing that I would also recommend, and I don't know if you do this, Chinto, but uh, so Sarah, who's usually on these as a somebody participating, I actually consult with her. I've done some coaching, and one of her goals was to get on panels. She was like, I can't figure out how to crack that nut. And what I told her is, let's stop applying. I mean, you can apply all you want. It's great. But what I really want you to do is come up with a couple of really interesting panels. You come up with a really interesting, catchy title. It can't be generic. Okay. Um, oh God, I'm drawing a blank. We had some really good ones at Indie PopCon last year. I'm gonna have to get back into those. Some really interesting titles that when you saw them, you knew immediately this is gonna be fun. I get what the subject is. I'm in, right? And then you write a good description, 2-3 sentences, but make it really clear what it is and make it so people are going to want to come. If it just says, I'm talking about this, it's a drink and draw with me. If people don't know who you are, it's not going to do anything. So if you can come up with a couple of fun panel ideas that you think, hey, they don't even have to know me, they're going to want to come to this thing because it sounds fun, you are going to get conventions that are going to pick you up and want you to do that panel. So then maybe you have to create the panel after that. That's okay. Get the word out there first. Get people involved in it. The other thing, Chinto, that I've done is like libraries or smaller cons around here. I ask them if they've ever done panels. The Schaumburg Library, when they started their Comic Con that they do every year, they were talking to me because the person knew that I did this stuff, and I said, "Okay, what are you doing for panels?" And she said, "Nothing. How are we going to do that?" I said, "Okay. So how about this? Give me a room. I'm going to do 2 panels. Even if you don't get anything else, you have 2 panels now on your first con." I did one about, God, if I can remember, one was about podcasting, breaking into podcasting, and the other one was about, I think it was becoming a professional nerd, um, like how I broke through. And no, I didn't have a lot of people there, but yes, I did have people there. And those panels became an institution for them. They had panels every year. At some point, I couldn't match it up to do their thing every year. But if I contacted them now and said, "Hey, I'm available," they'd always put me on. Let's see what you said here. Yep, been sending them to libraries for programs. I have a page on my website with what I offer. That's great, man. And are they specific panels, like what you do? Uh, Even if they are, keep doing it. And if they aren't, get some specifics. Of what the program, like almost like you're watching a TV show. What is the TV show and what's it about? If you have some of those, it gives them something to grip onto. Um, I have a feeling you already know that. Uh, yeah, and as far as putting yourself out there, putting your brand out there, I mean, yeah, comics, history, writing, yeah, those are all good subjects. And as long as you have something juicy, you're in a sea of people that do it. So you might have a lot of people who you're competing with that are like, oh, hey, it's Comic Con, and I've got 4 people that do writing and for comics. It might make it a little bit more difficult, but think outside of the box. The more you can get in front of people, the better. And once again, you don't have to stick to Comic Cons. There are all sorts of events and things out there. There are all sorts of groups that are looking for people to speak about things like this. And no, it's not about making money, which, yeah, public speaking, you can make a lot of money. I haven't cracked that nut yet. I do a fair amount, but I haven't cracked into it for money. But but I do get asked, and it gives me the opportunity to sell whatever it is I want to sell. Uh, and this, I wish you were coming to Indie PopCon. I have my own panel room. That's what we did. We even got it to the point that they have given us our own panel room. So I have 3 days of programming I have to create. I love it. People can submit. Great. I did a good one about Guillermo del Toro and another about pop books. Yeah, I would give you panel rooms. Too bad you're not going to Indie PopCon. Facebook keeps trying to tag groups and pages as I type. Oh, yeah. Uh, Facebook. So there you go. There you go. I hope that was informative. I hope that helped. I I know that some cons you submit to be a professional and then they plug you into panels, and some you have to submit panels, or some you once you get in, like you're doing Artist Alley or whatever, then you say I'm available for panels, and they have a panel track person. Let's see what this says. Indie PopCon I can do next year if you were doing it, just didn't line up this year. Put it on your calendar, Chinto. Let's see what we can make happen, because they definitely are committed to bringing uh, indie comics there. I had a pretty big name, to me, a huge name that said he wanted to do it, but he didn't think he could make it this April. But he was like, "Hey, if they want me in the future," and I gave it to him, and they were like, "Oh my God, that's a huge name." Indie comics. He's told me where he lives in California. He's like, "Yeah, I don't do a lot of these." He goes, "I don't seem to get asked." And I said, "Well, they would fly you out because he's a celebrity. Okay, they would pay for your travel. You'd probably pay your hotel room and your food, but bring books because you'll sell a ton and you get to sign them, and it's a special appearance." I've never seen him. I'm a fan. I've never seen him in the Midwest. Um, so Indie PopCon is looking to have a hand there. Uh, so yeah, have it on your calendar. We're also doing Louisville this year. So I mean, that's a little bit further for you, but if you wanted to do Louisville, that's in the fall. If you need your car detailed, you could talk to Bruce that's on here because he has a business. He is happy to do that. In fact, I wanted to give you a little shout out, which I'm going to give you on Saturday as well, Bruce. Hey, man, I saw your post that you're doing more with that. You're doing installation, accessories, and that. I'm so proud of you. Bruce is amazing. So he is somebody. I don't know if it's going to be just localized or if you're like, yeah, I'll come to Chicago and I'll detail your car. I don't know. Bruce doesn't have much to do. He's a very sad, lonely guy, but he's great at car detailing. He's actually awesome. You guys would love him. Uh, let's see. Spoiler: it was me. I'm only big with my own family. uh, yeah, and thanks, brother. And yes, Bruce, you admitted it. You're very sad and lonely. Well, that's because he's a Packers fan, and I have no idea. I don't know if the Packers have won anything. They didn't win the Super Bowl this year, so I know that. So he's very sad. Uh, look, I was almost sportsy for a second there. So yeah, I'm going to talk about that again on Saturday because Bruce, I'm really proud of you. I hope. Are you applying anything we're talking about? Are you thinking about this stuff? Because I'm trying to make this broad. I don't want it to just be books or just be comics or any of that kind of stuff. Is this like affecting the marketing that you're thinking about, or is it just you just want to hang out with that man of yours? Oh boy, I don't know. So another thing that I am going to bring up on here because people watch this after the fact. I've mentioned that I do consulting and coaching, and if you are interested in that, just reach out to me. You can reach out to me through Facebook or through email or whatever, just go to Southgate Media Group, go to New Media Lab, go to my Facebook page. Don't show up at my door. I may not answer. But I do a free session, which is not a timeshare. I really do this, but it's very personalized. We figure out, is this something that you could use? Is this something I can help with? And if not, I have literally sent people either to another person or said, look at this website. This is going to give you all your answers. You know, the other thing I do though, and this is something that I have kept under wraps, is yeah, Bruce, when you're ready, if you want to talk to me, talk to me. Taking notes, making plans. There's a lot of things you could do locally that would be really interesting, and we want to keep that cost down as much as possible. And I'm also going to need your rates because we're probably going to want our car detailed at some point. Uh, so the other thing, though, is I do web design. Uh, it is not a primary thing for me. It's something that I when I was in school, I kept taking web design classes and that so that I could talk to the people that make websites because I figure in business you're going to always be needing that. And as a result, I got so that I understood it really well. When with our company, I just said I'm going to do this myself. I didn't want to pay. One time I paid for people with an old business, and they keep stringing along forever. And I was like, look, it doesn't need to be this way. Pay an upfront fee, get things right. If you need service, we talk. So one of the authors was having a hell of a time. She was spending all this money on uh, having her website maintained, and she was never happy with what they were doing. So I said, let's talk about it. I ended up doing hers. And here, I'm going to show you. Share screen. There we go. I did Shoshana's website. Very simple, nice and clean, looks good. I put a few links where we've got the about, we've got my favorite thing, her newsletter archive. And I have not done this yet because we put it up and we just wanted to make it look good, which I think it did. Um, but I will be doing some SEO to it. So it optimizes her newsletter, which makes it more searchable by Google. So if anyone's interested in having a website done and just a landing page, I'm not doing really complex stuff. I'm not doing a lot of video motion, blah, 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 because frankly, I think that for most people, they just need a simple, well-written, clean-looking landing page that knows how to have a call to action. If you notice on hers, here are my books. You can buy my full collection here. That's what she needs to do. It has join her newsletter, which her newsletter numbers are going up. That's it. Basic stuff. Got to have a landing page, got to have a place for people to go. So if you are interested in that, reach out to me. I do that as well. Okay, guys, we've hit that time. Thank you for joining me for happy hour. We will do this again in the future. Didn't have a lot of people. Maybe it was too early. Give me feedback. If you think I should do a little bit later, I will. If you think like doing it at night would be better, like I could do I don't know, 7 at night, 8 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock. I'm old. I'm getting tired. 8 o'clock, you get even deeper voice. So let me know. Let me know what you think. Not just you two guys, but anybody else that's watching. Let me see what this says. It was a bit early, to be honest. People probably working. I thought so too. I was trying to go with, I did it at this time one time before, and I had a flurry of people, and I thought, maybe that's the time. I think I'll try something a little bit later next time. All right. That's it, guys. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, everybody, for watching. If you have questions, reach out. We'll answer them in the AMA. I will be here Saturday morning, as per usual, 8 a.m. There we go. I've got my scroll now saying that. 8 a.m. Bring your coffee. We'll talk. More marketing ideas. There's usually a better crowd for that one. Yeah, we'll keep the fun rolling. Thanks a lot, you guys. Have a wonderful evening. See you Saturday.